In today's show, the long-awaited return of Scoot Henderson is finally coming on Friday when the Blazers host the Memphis Grizzlies. Plus, the NBA trade deadline passes without another move from the Blazers. Let's talk about what to expect from Scoot and post-deadline here in Portland. Welcome to Locked On Blazers. Let's get into it.
You are Locked On Trailblazers, your daily Portland Trailblazers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
What's up, world? It's your past first point guard and Trailblazers reporter, Mike Richmond. You listen to another episode of Locked On Blazers, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, available wherever you get podcasts and also on YouTube. Thanks for making this show your first listen, coming at you each and every weekday, Monday through Friday. So make it a part of your daily routine. Make it your first listen. Tell your friends to do the same. Locked On Blazers, your team every day. In today's program, we're talking about the long-awaited return of Sterling Scoot Henderson. It's finally here. He's been cleared to play and will make his debut Friday when the Blazers host the first of two games against the Memphis Grizzlies. Welcome back, Scoot. We'll talk all about that return and what to anticipate and why it's meaningful and all of those things. Plus, the NBA trade deadline is gone. It has passed us by, and the Blazers finished with one move. We will talk about what they did, what they didn't do, and what is next for them, including the decisions looming for Sidy Cissoko and Caleb Love, and wrap up some other moves from around the league and kind of what it sets up for the rest of the West heading to the stretch run of the season. Let's start with Scoot, though. He's back. Scoot hasn't played in an NBA game in 10 months. He last played in the end of March of 2025. A long spell without seeing Scoot in uniform. He took major steps last year, and this was supposed to be this big year for him, right? Like, year one was so rough for Scoot. Year two, like, legitimately promising signs. Still a flawed player and all those things, but like legitimate, like, okay, yeah, hey, this dude has like he's got some stuff, but it was some stuff. And the year three was supposed to be the and. What else can he do? Can he hit it consistently? Can he get better than this? What is his, what do we think of his ceiling can be if he really gets going? How much does he add to the dynamic? How does he fit here, there, and everywhere? So there's so many questions for Scoot. And now he missed the first 51 games of the season after tearing his left hamstring in, just ahead of training camp, unofficial practices at the team's practice facility. They practice for 2 weeks. I've mentioned this before. They just don't. It's just not official. You can't get fined for not showing up. But it's a practice. He out on the practice court, tears his hamstring. It was maybe going to keep him out 4 to 10 weeks. But there was always a caveat: the 4 to 10 weeks to sort of get back to basketball activity. It took him a lot longer than that to get back to basketball activities. He finally started running in January, cleared for contact about a week ago, and now set to make his debut, according to Tiago Splitter, who told reporters on Thursday at the practice facility that Scoot is going to play on Friday. Before we get into the rest of the Scoot news, Blazers play the Grizzlies' first of two home games. Denny is officially going to be listed as doubtful for that game, which, importantly, like, no one has shaken the doubtful tag. Anyone who shows up on game day and doesn't get it changed, it shows up like to the arena with a doubtful tag for the Blazers this season, has not played. So even that alone tells you that there was a pretty slim chance. The technical parlance in NBA math world is that you have a 25% chance to play with a doubtful tag. But Splitter told reporters that Denny probably won't play. So I do not anticipate Denny returning, but they will get Scoot Henderson back in the lineup. And it's just a really important stretch for Scoot. These final 31 games are just for clarity. I guess not just clarity. There's some hope too. You want to be hopeful, but a more sort of like in sort of calculated team building stuff. It's about clarity, right? It's about figuring out what Scoot is right now and whether that informs what he can be and cannot be. In theory, I think Scoot's skill set is like very much needed. They really need another ball handler. They could use some better playmakers in terms of guys who can pass, particularly guys who can like pass on the move, get an advantage and read and read the floor at full speed. And like, they want to play fast. They want to, their sort of offense is predicated on like pretty simple reads, get into the paint, and then cut and make, read off that first drive, kick the ball out, and like, there's some rules about who cuts where and when, but like it's kind of all read and react stuff. It's Vik Krejci even said, like, it's not like we have 30 different sets. Like, they're running pretty sort of basic, flowy read and react offense, right? It's just they're out there hooping, for better or for worse, quite frankly, for worse. But like it is, but like in theory, that's exactly what Scoot, the type of style, and specifically like what this team is lacking specifically fits Scoot. He in theory, Scoot really unlocks what they want to do, both as a team that wants to play fast and just like a team that struggles to sort of maybe get advantages and to generate consistent quality looks in the half court. Scoot was the best connective passer on the team last year. You assume that hasn't gone anywhere, and we'll see if he see if he's grown in that area. But that's just the thing with Scoot. It's all been theoretical, for 10 months. He's going to return after an extended break now, with this like hopeful skill set. And there's 5 games before the All-Star break, but it includes 2 sets of back-to-backs, right? They play Memphis twice, and then they got a back-to-back right before the break. So a road back-to-back at that, right before the break. So, potentially he doesn't play in those back-to-backs. We'll see. I mean, that remains to be seen. I mentioned that last year Matisse Thybulle came back and played the first and second set of a back-to-back in his season debut after missing the first 64 games of the year. So it's not impossible that he could play both, but I assume he'll be on a relatively strict minutes limit, like 15 to 18 minutes, even if he's cleared in both of those games. So like while the schedule could potentially limit his participation, even now that he's back and ready to roll, even if he plays, like even if we just assume that he plays in those games, he's likely just going to need some time to get his hooper legs under him. I was going to say sea legs, but I think it's more like hooper legs under him, and just to kind of figure out where he fits into the puzzle. Like, what his role is going to be for the most part. He's probably going to start as your backup point guard and get some minutes running, like operating ball in hand, operating the second unit. But it's also like where he fits in all the other combos. Like, they really just need to maximize this opportunity for Scoot to see as much of him as they possibly can. How much can you be on the court with Scoot Henderson, Shaedon Sharpe? Like, can you defend at all with that group, right? Can you defend at all with that duo in the backcourt? And how good are they on offense? Can Scoot play with Drew, both on the ball and off the ball? What does that look like? What about 3-guard looks? Because like Drew Holiday's under contract for 2 more years, right? Can you play Scoot and Shea and Drew together? Or is that just a nightmare, right? Like, what does that look like? Can Scoot in other looks where Denny Avdia has the ball, because the Blazers have been at their best when Denny Avdia has been operating as the primary guy, can Scoot be an off-ball player, and how much can he thrive kind of in a role where he's more of a spacer or like an opportunistic cutter, but where he's not the primary guy, where he's not making decisions there. The other part of me thinks like just with Scoot is like pretty much regardless of whether he's good or not, they should give him minutes. Like if he's good, obviously you play him a bunch of minutes, but if he struggles, they should just give him charity minutes. They should really just like at this point in the season, considering where they are, they're 10th in the West, pretty much everyone below them wants to lose. And they have, I'll talk about this more in a second, but like relatively, this is going to be hard for them to move up much higher in the standings than they are right now. Maybe they can move to 9th, but like because of kind of the position they are, if Scoot stinks, like if he really struggles, just like this transition back, they should still probably play him 28 minutes a night regardless. They should just like give him those charity minutes because they just want to see as much of him as absolutely possible. If he's hooping, you consider maybe playing him like 33, right? Like give him a full-on starter diet of minutes. But like if he's kind of bumpy to begin this season, or if he's bumpy for the whole final 30 games, I think they just like straight up charity minutes. Just see as much as you can, because the ramp up period is going to be real. The feeling out period is going to be real. Then you get to this part of the year where some teams are just actively losing, like a bunch are going to be actively losing this year. Some teams are just, kind of feeling out, saying like, where are they at in the playoff standings? Can we rest some guys strategically? Do we need to, it gets to this weird part of the year where, I've mentioned this before, where teams are just on very different frequencies. Some teams desperately need to win. Some teams don't need to win because they're good. Some teams really want to actively lose, right? You get to this sort of weird part of the year. So it's not your best data gathering time, but like the Blazers should absolutely absolutely try to just like figure out as much as they possibly can with Scoot. All of the combos, everything he can do as an on-ball guy, as an off-ball guy, as a defender, like, where has he taken steps? Where does he still need to improve? Anything they could possibly learn. And the way they're going to learn that is getting him out on the floor. He's just got to play. And like, I have probably been opposed to, I think on good teams, you don't just like give out charity minutes to young players, but one, Scoot Henderson is like, heavily invested in. They drafted him 3rd overall. It's in his 3rd year. He missed all this time. Like, the time to be sort of like proud and say like, no, earn it, is just like that's for someone else. They walked down this path long enough, and they just need to know we got to maximize Scoot exposure over the final 30 games for this to be useful, one way or another, right? Like, negative data is still data. Like, you kind of like, okay, it doesn't work. That is you, but you need to find that out, right? He's heading into a summer where he's extension eligible. I can't imagine that they signed him to a contract extension coming off this season, but like, that means that he will enter next year most likely as heading into restricted free agency in his 4th season. Like, you just want to know as much as you possibly can, and that starts with Friday against the Grizzlies. I'm excited to see him because I do think the theoretical skill set of Scoot is awesome for how they want to play, but translating the theoretical skill set of Scoot to like the actual productive skill set has been an adventure for the whole Sterling experience. But I think before his season ended last year, that was the best we'd seen him play. So hopefully he is back to that relatively soon, and then maybe moves beyond it. We shall see. Okay, the Blazers didn't do anything else at the trade deadline. It's Vik Krejci and nothing else. Let's talk about what they need to do and what are their options for the remainder of the season. Join me in that second segment. We will do just that. First, I want to tell you that today's show is brought to you by DoorDash. It's the NBA season, and DoorDash has a way to keep fans in their bag the whole way through, whether you're watching highlights, whether you're just checking out who's got the best tunnel fit, or you want to check out your favorite player on your favorite team. DoorDash makes the entire season more fun because every player has their bag, and with DoorDash, fans have one too. DoorDash keeps your snacks stocked, your gear fresh, and your watch party vibes absolutely on point. There's going to be nights when watching your favorite NBA team is going to stress you out, so let DoorDash become your post-game therapy. Sometimes you just need a little bit of dessert right now, or if the group chat says pull up, DoorDash makes sure that you show up prepared with snacks, with cups, even a phone charger for your friend who's always on 2%. From tip-off to overtime, stay in your bag and order on DoorDash. Get snacks, drinks, gear, whatever gets you through the season delivered right to your door. DoorDash in your bag all season long. Today's episode is also brought to you by the good folks over there at Quo, who know that this is the time of year when many small business owners, or business owners in general, think about how they're running their business. And you might think to yourself, there's got to be a better way. And there is. Streamlining your communications is one of the quickest upgrades you can make. That's why today's show is brought to you by Quo, spelled Q-U-O, the smarter way to run your business communications, because when your team is reachable, organized, and communicating in one place, you're not just working cleaner, you're creating more opportunities to connect with customers. Here's how Quo works. It is super simple. Your whole team can call and text from one shared business number so nothing gets missed. Everyone sees the full conversation thread, which makes replies faster and more personal. And it works right from your phone or your computer, and you can even keep your existing number. It's no surprise that Quo is the #1 rated business phone system on G2, trusted by more than 90,000 businesses, from solo operators to growing teams. So make this the year where no opportunity and no customer slips away. Try Quo for free, plus get 20% off your first 6 months when you go to quo.com/lockedonnba. That's QUO.com/lockedonnba. Quo, no missed calls, no missed customers. All right. If you're living that everyday lifestyle and you are indeed listening to this show every single day, I appreciate you. Thank you for making it your first listen. If you want to make it official, go join the Locked On Everydayer Club for $5 a month or $50 a year. You get access to an ad-free version of this podcast, the ad-free audio, Locked On Blazers with no interruptions, plus access to the members-only Discord where we're chopping it up, talking all things Blazers. You can talk with me and your fellow Blazer fans. There's a link in the show notes, lockedonblazerspod.supercast.com. You can check out the link for more. Okay, let's talk about the Blazers situation. They're done. It's post deadline. They made one move. They traded Duop Reith and a couple second round picks and got V. Krejci. I think, albeit a minor move, and obviously some people always want the Blazers to do more. Totally get that. It's more fun when your team, seemingly makes a major upgrade, right? Albeit some of them are risky, but I think the V. Krejci trade is pretty good. It addressed a need. It was relatively inexpensive, and if Veit works out, he's part of the plan for a long time. If Veit doesn't work out, has like a small partial guarantee for next season and a fully non-guaranteed deal in the following year. They can just decide that they have a lot of optionality to keep him around if he's part of the plan or not. He's on a minimum deal, and he might be like a very specifically helpful bench shooter. Bang. But they didn't do anything else. And part of it was because the big thing that was kind of holding up their chance to make a larger swing didn't happen. Giannis Antetokounmpo is still a Milwaukee Buck. He didn't go anywhere. I think what really happened was he very deeply wanted to go somewhere, but he didn't want to be the bad guy. And the Bucks probably don't really want to trade him because they like having the best player probably in franchise history, with all due respect to Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, around on the roster. So they were going to need to get blown away by trades, and the teams that really got into the mix didn't have much to trade him in the end, right? Like there wasn't this robust market for him because of kind of maybe the way the league rules work, and also the specifics of Giannis Antetokounmpo. He's an age he is and a price point he is, and like you're going to trade for him if you think you can win a title, or at least, and it's not guaranteed to win a title, but think that you're in the very inner circle of contenders. You can convince yourself that you can win a title over the next, 3 seasons, 2.5 seasons, whatever it might be. So they're just it didn't, the Knicks reportedly dropped out. The Warriors were out as of last night. And then this morning I woke up to the news that the Minnesota Timberwolves had made a trade, and I said, well, probably means they're out too. So Minnesota and Miami didn't get it done. Giannis stays in Milwaukee. Deadline day was relatively quiet. There was a lot of action this deadline. It just all happened in the 2 days prior to deadline day. Deadline day was relatively quiet. And so the Blazers, with no extra moves other than Veit and no Giannis move, like Giannis was their ticket, right? Because their picks are still tied up in the great hubris trade of Larry Nance Jr. And so the Blazers can't trade their own picks. The Bucks picks probably their most valuable things to trade, but you don't really want to move them until you know what the deal is with the Bucks, because they'll become most valuable probably at the moment Giannis gets traded, or if the Bucks bottom out after Giannis gets traded. But they're not going to reach their peak value beforehand, right? Like that is unlikely. Plus, like holding on to them and just drafting players if the Bucks stink could be more valuable. Although I think probably as trade pieces, they probably end up, that's probably probably trading them back to Milwaukee at some point is probably the way they end up getting maximized. But obviously there's a lot of permutations where it could happen. But because of the Blazers, full roster with 15 guys right up against the tax threshold, and relatively limited tradable parts, it was unlikely they were going to make a move. I mentioned on yesterday's show that without a Giannis deal, that it was realistically relatively unlikely they made a move. Certainly very unlikely they made a major move, just based on what they had to trade. And of course, trade deadline comes and goes without them making another move. I like Veit. I think it'll be an interesting fit. He's not going to start on a team that's really good, and he's not going to change the Blazers' altitude all on his own. But like, hitting moves on the margins is how you stay in position to improve when bigger moves, bolder moves are available. And Veit will fit any bolder move because he's cheap and can make shots. So with a full roster and with the trade deadline behind them, the Blazers' real questions are turned to their productive two-way players. But I think Scoot Henderson's inclusion does somewhat complicate the two-way players. Sidi Sissoko is a useful bench wing who provides a bunch of defensive energy, occasionally some quality offense, but mostly good physical defense and a whole bunch of sort of hustle energy and a lot of well-orchestrated flops. he is on a two-way contract, which means he can be on the NBA active list for 50 games. He's been on the NBA active list for 46. He's got 4 more games before he is no longer eligible to be on the active list. He doesn't disappear. He doesn't get cut. He just can't. He'll just be on the bench wearing street clothes. He cannot be on the active list. That's going to come up, assuming that he plays and is on the active list for the games moving forward. And with no Denny, you can assume at least Friday he'll play and play a lot. He would hit his threshold February 11th. That's the penultimate game before the All-Star break, meaning he would need the morning of February 12th. You'd have to offer him a NBA contract. To do so, you would have to waive someone. We'll talk about who they might waive here in a moment. But Caleb Love, just behind City, he's at 43 games, 7 shy of the 50-game threshold. He would hit his number, assuming that he plays every single game, and he has. Although more in a moment, he would hit his limit if he played in all the remaining games, or is active in all the remaining games, February 22nd. That is the second game coming out of the All-Star break. So if the Blazers want to convert Caleb, if they want to convert City, they've got to waive someone. They could also, conceivably, they could reach a buyout in which a player gives back money, but I can't imagine a situation where like a minimum guy has a deal waiting for them on the back end, and so they give back money. So that seems relatively unlikely. Most likely you're going to waive folks. I say Ryan Rupert and Matisse Thybulle are probably your two most likely candidates, with a third being Blake Wesley, seemingly less likely. No one else on the team, based on their either how much money they make and are owed into the future, because Roops and Wesley are on minimum deals, and because Thybulle's on expiring contract and just hasn't been available for basically any of the last 2 seasons. Those are the guys that you would waive. The Blazers can stay under the tax threshold and waive both of those guys. They might have to wait a little bit. By my math, because of the way the salaries are prorated, they would have to wait 2 extra days to make to stay under the tax threshold and keep Caleb Love under contract. But with the return of Scoot Henderson and with the return of Blake Wesley, and assuming that Drew Holiday is an every night contributor, they could just have Caleb Love be on the inactive list a couple times over the next, say week, or coming out of the All-Star break a couple times, depending on availability, and that would just sort of naturally push back his threshold, 50-game threshold date a little bit further. And when they actually need him, they can just wait until they need him, right? And say, if someone does get hurt or someone gets sick or whatever it is, and you have to play Caleb Love in those minutes, go ahead and do it. The last game he played 8 minutes. That was before Scoot got back. Wouldn't surprise me if Caleb Love is straight up does not play against Memphis. I assume he'll be on the active list just because they'll need the bodies, but we shall see. I think that is something to monitor. So that would be the move. They're going to have to, at this point, they're going to have to waive someone. The thing about the math is, and I want to point this out, is like, you wait till you hit the threshold and then you do it. Like, they need to push it out as far as possible, because we're talking like within $1 We're talking within $7,000, $8,000 to stay below the line at this point. Like, they can do it and the math works. They just have to wait until the very, very, very end, because they're not going to go into the tax to convert one of these guys to a minimum contract. It's just not how it's going to work. Okay, that's what you need to know about the Blazers' post-deadline moves. That's the last decisions they have to make, and those will come up here in the next 2 weeks. A little longer than that, I guess 3 weeks. Just over. So what else happened in the NBA, the trade deadline? Well, let's talk about a couple moves and kind of what's ahead for the Blazers, both like in the bottom of the standings and in the Western Conference postseason push as well. Join me in that third segment. We will discuss just that. First, though, let's talk FanDuel. It's one last call for football, one final Sunday, one last kickoff, the final chance to get in on the action on FanDuel before the NFL season comes to a close. Super Bowl 60, it's here, and FanDuel's making sure you're right in the middle of it with a special offer just in time for the biggest game of the year. So whether you're riding for the Seahawks or the beloved underdog from New England. I don't think the Patriots are beloved outside of many places, but Drake May, Tar Heel legend. Or you're building one last same-game parlay because you just can't get enough. This is everyone's favorite game. It's a game you've been waiting for, where predictions turn into plays, stats turn into storylines, and every snap feels bigger. If you are a new customer and you're going to be watching Super Bowl 60, you can bet just $5 and you get $200 in bonus bets if you win. Make it count, because after the Super Bowl, the season is over. Last call for football on FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of Super Bowl 60. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. All right, still a pass first point guard. I'm still Mike Richmond, and you are still listening to Locked On Blazers. So, what happened in the NBA trade deadline on deadline day? Well, Giannis didn't go anywhere. Ja Morant didn't go anywhere. As it turns out, Ja Morant, last dude left in Memphis, and nobody wants him. Stunner. I would say the biggest thing that happened on deadline day in terms of shocking moves is the Clippers kind of made a big pivot. The Clippers, one of the hottest teams in the league, probably the hottest team in the league since December 1st, they at the trade deadline, they shipped James Harden off for Darius Garland, and then on deadline, just ahead of the buzzer at the deadline, they shipped off Ivica Zubac and Kobe Brown, but Zubac to the Pacers. And they got back a couple first-round picks, Ben Mathurin and Isaiah Jackson. That's a pretty big pivot. From Zoo and Harden to Mathurin, Ijax. That's Isaiah Jackson, a backup big who played a bunch for the Pacers in the 2024 Eastern Conference Finals run and then tore his Achilles early in the following season. But Mathurin, Isaiah Jackson, and Garland. And they get a couple first and a second for their troubles. Garland's good. Mathurin is a decent young player. He's a scorer. I don't know if he does a lot else, but he can score. Good athlete, has never put it together really as a good defender, but I guess has the tools there to do so. But this seems like just a move that says we're not championship level good. We were never going to win a championship with this core, and the only path to acquire good players, young players, and draft picks was to punt on good players. Was to say, Zubac had his best year last year. He hasn't been as good this year. Hey, it's time. James is a pain in the butt. We weren't going to pay him anyways. Hey, it's time. Let's trade him for a young player. I think trading James Harden for Darius Garland is a really nice roll of the dice for the Clippers, but I think it makes them worse immediately. And so, if you're the Blazers, the Clippers are a half game up. They're 23-27. The Blazers are 23-28. I think realistically, because of this pivot, Portland's probably floor remains 10th because everyone below them in the West, Memphis and Dallas, they're incentivized to lose. Dallas got actively worse. Memphis got actively worse. These teams are going to lose. So I still think the Blazers' floor, even with all their struggles, losers of 6 in a row. I think their floor remains 10th. They beat Memphis a couple times on Friday and Saturday. Their floor's 10th. Grizz ain't coming back, right? You win these couple home games against the only team that's sort of vaguely in your orbit. That's it, and that's all, folks. But the Clippers getting worse, and particularly with the questionable availability of Darius Garland in the immediate, the Blazers could climb up to 9th. I think it's relatively unlikely they climb further, but I think the Warriors are worse. They're in 8th as I'm recording this before the games start on Thursday. The Warriors are 4 games up on the Blazers. 4 is a lot in the final 30. That's a lot of games to make up at this time of the year. It's not impossible, but it is a fair number of games considering how many games the Blazers have won right now. So I think that's pretty unlikely, but I think the Warriors are worse. They didn't get Giannis or whatever. I don't know that flipping Kuminga and Hield for Kristaps Porzingis makes them materially worse, but compared to what they were earlier this season when they had a healthy Jimmy Butler, yeah, they're not that good. And I think I don't know. We'll see what they look like with Kristaps. Maybe he's magic. He's been very good when he plays. He just has played 17 games all year. So relying on him to play a bunch seems unlikely. So I think both those teams are worse. Everyone else is probably the Suns in 7th or 8 games up. Blazers aren't catching them. So I still think the Blazers can move into 9th, and I still don't think they'll fall below 10th. But the below them is one thing I want to talk about. The one of the most notable parts of this Clippers-Pacers swap is not just that the Clippers kind of pivoted and said, we're moving to a sort of a new era of Clippers basketball, right? That they pivoted and say, we're just not good enough. Let's go somewhere else. Let's go another direction. Is that the Pacers took one of the weirdest gambles you'll ever see. So they traded them 2 picks. One of them is a 2029 unprotected pick for Zubac. The other is a 2026 first rounder coming from Indiana's own first rounder. It is protected 1 through 4. And then 10 through 30. So it only goes to the Clippers if the Pacers are between 5 and 9. That is some real sicko degenerate gambler stuff if you're Indiana. The Pacers, heading into Thursday's games, have the 3rd worst record in the league. So even with that, though, they have basically a coin flip chance, slightly below 50%, but right around there. Basically a coin flip chance of finishing with the 5th pick in the draft, 5th or 6th pick in the draft. That's dicey, right? That gives away the pick. So they're heavily incentivized to lose. And then you look at the rest of the standings. Like, this is why the protected pick stuff is just really nonsense in the league, because the Pacers make this weird trade that says, like, yeah, we'll give you a pick if it falls in this range, and we are now really incentivized to lose, because that's a better path than trying to win and drop into the 10 to the 10th and below range in the lottery. Like, that might even be hard for them to pull off based on what they've got. The Pacers are like actively pulled the plug and are planning for next year. They're going to lose like dogs. And guess what? There's about to be a massive tank off across the entire league. I would say the bottom 9 teams in the NBA right now, that's Sacramento, New Orleans, Indiana, Brooklyn, Washington, Utah, Dallas, and Memphis, along with Milwaukee. Every single one of those teams is like strongly incentivized to lose for a draft that many think is the top 3 or 4 picks are excellent players. We'll see. And I think some of them are pretty tantalizing. I'd say the first 3. Caleb Wilson's my guy, but I think I don't know if I see an absolute surefire superstar with him. But he's going to be good, I hope. But like, top 3, 4 picks are like, ooh, special type of selections, right? These are the type of things, the type of prospects you lose for intentionally. So, every team in that group, except for New Orleans, which is just like, they're bad because of mismanagement. They're one of the most poorly run teams in all of North American professional sports. Shout out to the Benson family and my cousin Jake. But like, it's... Every one of those, the other 8 teams in the bottom 9, heavily have their picks, some version of their own picks, and are heavily incentivized to lose basketball games. Like, the tankathon is going to be here. And I think like that alone makes the Blazers' chances of falling out of the play-in very low, because everybody's after it now. It is going to get gross the back half of the season. And I think, like, importantly, you're playing, so you look ahead of the schedule, it's like the Blazers play some of these tank teams, right? Like, still on the schedule, and they're really going to be tanking at this point. Like, this is really going to get aggressive, because if you're going to lose a lot. That's the incentive. That's the incentive in the NBA. Lose a lot. They tried to flatten the odds such that I think you don't get rewarded as much, but the math remains the math. And you don't like the math. It's better to lose more, and the league, like, literally at this time of year incentivizes losing, and it's freaking February. Like, it's pre-All-Star break. And I think you can look out and say there's 9 teams, and also there's 8 teams, and then also just the sad sack Pelicans, who are just like, yeah, we're going to lose, and we're trying to lose, and we made moves that are going to help us lose more, and we're going to we're going to tell Jaren Jackson Jr. that the game is in the wrong city, so he doesn't show up, and we're going to lock Anthony Davis out of his hotel room so he can't go places. Like, teams are really going to go for it during this stretch. So, I think this stinks, but notable for where the Blazers are. And also, like, if you're saying like the Blazers got a tank too, it's like, it's a crowded field. There's a crowd. I don't think, they probably just can't even lose enough to make it worth it with all these teams that they're already so far away from them and have done so much losing. So, Portland is fairly likely to end up in the lottery regardless. They're just not going to end up in the top of the lottery, because there is going to be a race to the bottom, like we maybe haven't seen since the Wemby draft way back in 2022. That's going to do it for today's show. Come back for tomorrow. Actually, just kidding. This is Friday's program. I'm in exit mode. I forgot what day of the week it was. Blazers play Friday, they play Saturday, so typically I would record those shows on Sunday if once those games are played, because this is what we do. Monday through Friday is when these shows come out, but I believe Joe Cronin's going to speak to the media on Friday evening, and I believe Scoot Henderson's going to make his debut, and depending on if those are notable occurrences, your boy's going to do a bonus episode. It might be a 7-episode week, because that's the type of generosity I've got. But if I would say most likely look for this next show in your feed on Sunday. We'll talk to you about both Memphis games and whatever Joe Cronin said. But we shall see. Check your feeds wherever you get the podcasts. Also on YouTube. Tell your friends about the show. Go join the Everydayer Club if you're into it. There's a link in the show notes. And then come back for more shows next week. I appreciate you listening. I will talk to you soon.